Hello viewers, my name is Ollie and I'm going to talk to you about a watch that I've owned for about a year now. It's a watch that I've actually owned the newer version previously, and I had the newer version and always kind of had a hankering after the older one, which is weird because I, like probably many of you, am a bit of a magpie when it comes to newer, shinier watches. So the fact that I had a new version and still lusted after the old one, to me said a lot about the fact that the old one just had a sense of, I don't know, elegance. Let's get into it. So the watch we're talking about here is the Rolex Explorer II, reference 16570. And specifically we're talking about the Polar, so the white version. Now, these are watches that have increased quite rapidly in price over the last kind of 5-6 years, as have most 5-digit Rolexes. But previously, these were kind of unloved in the Rolex collection. And the reason for that was predominantly because they were overshadowed by their bigger brother, which was the GMT Master. And the reason they were overshadowed, particularly by this watch, is because this had the kind of panache of the Rolex professional range. It had the rotating bezel, of course, which is not something that came with the Explorer II, but they both shared the independently set 24-hour hand design. Now, the other reason it was slightly overlooked is because on the other side of the professional range you had the Submariner, which had a much deeper water resistance rating. This is only rated to 100 meters. So it was kind of caught between being a GMT watch with an independent 24-hour hand and a kind of very practical, sporty dive watch where the Submariner had things licked. So it became a watch that kind of sat in the ether a little bit, not really knowing whether it was a GMT, not really knowing whether it was a sporty watch, and that kind of plays through into the bracelet too, because they, in the later 16570s, they replaced the GMT style clasp here, like you can see in this one, with the flip lock, where we now have a Submariner style clasp on top of the hinge here to secure things into place. So to me, this is the best iteration of the 16570 with this later Submariner style bracelet, and with the lug holes in the case and the tritium dial, where you'll start to get that nice patina over time, which I think just looks fabulous when offset against this lovely white striking dial. Now then, what do I like about this watch? Well, this watch to me is striking partly because it's just a unique color for a Rolex with that white dial. I love the way that the visibility is enhanced over the black dial, and I love the way that Rolex have put these lovely black painted hands on this watch. When we compare it to the GMT Master with its white gold hands, we see that the visibility of the time on the Explorer II is significantly enhanced. It just pops against the GMT Master, which I love. I absolutely love that. I love the case size of 40mm. These old 5-digit sports watches are just perfect in that sense. I think they cover so many bases so well. They fit under a shirt nicely. I've got a sub 7-inch wrist, so it just fits perfectly on my hand. And ultimately, I love the way that they're nice and lightweight. They're not too imposing. I rarely notice it actually on my wrist, whereas when I had the more modern Explorer II with the orange 24-hour hand, then it was the 216570, so not the 225670. it felt too big, it felt too heavy, and I was too conscious of it being on my wrist all of the time. Now, it's not without its drawbacks. The bracelets on these early 5-digit Rolexes are really quite flimsy, they're quite tinny, they tend to kind of misshape a bit in the bracelet clasp itself. They can kind of start to deform if they're, you know, used every day, because actually this is really quite a simple and kind of vulnerable area of the watch, really. This very simple male to female clasp, and then you have this kind of clasp guard that goes over the top. And to be honest, the power reserve isn't brilliant. I probably get about a couple of days on it, which obviously I'd like a few more days, really, because I do wear it in rotation with a few other watches. So that's a bit of a negative. Obviously with this one, as per the key difference with the GMT, we cannot move this outer ring on the bezel. So it becomes a bit of a kind of slightly compromised design that I think is charming, but also kind of smacks of Rolex just kind of introducing these design quirks that actually think, I wonder if they're doing it just to distance itself from the GMT range, when actually it would have been pretty simple to add a kind of spring-loaded turn mechanism into it, which would have added that extra level of kind of character, I think, to the watch. In terms of values, well, to be honest, the GMTs have done, you know, actually fairly kind of, I wouldn't say badly, but they've kind of treaded water over the last couple of years. And the Explorer II, over the last year, has basically stayed flat. We've had a bit of a peak and then a trough again. But because these are kind of 5-digit Rolexes, they're performing fairly well. Not brilliantly, but fairly well. And so, full transparency, I bought this one for £7,300 from a company called Zoops. And I think it's probably worth about the same, maybe slightly less now. Probably the same if it were from a company like Zoops. But if I was selling this second hand now today on Chrono or something similar on a watch forum, I think I'd be lucky to get £7 grand for it. So I think prices are slightly on the down. That is obviously a kind of a bigger watch industry trend at the moment. I am confident that values will stay strong on these, partly because of the unique dial, partly because of the fact that they have just released the new Explorer II with a slightly revised face and movement. So obviously investing in the model range and continuing to bring out new iterations helps strengthen the value of these slightly older models. To be honest, I wear this watch now all of the time. I think what I want to do with this is make it my true daily. At the moment, I mostly wear a Planet Ocean Omega. That is my daily, but since having this come into the collection about a year ago, I've started wearing the Planet Ocean much less and this much more. So, unsure whether the Planet Ocean will stick around, but what's for certain is that this will stay as a key feature in my collection, I hope for years to come. Actually, talking of the collection, I'd be far more likely to sell the GMT actually, because this now, although they're not dissimilar in value, this is probably worth an extra £3,000 or so. And although it does have quite a lot of character, I actually prefer the Explorer II. This is the watch I grab and put on when I have the choice. Mainly also because it is slightly more under the radar for those that don't really know watches. So I live in London, so it's obviously a fairly attention-grabbing piece, this GMT Master, which is not always the best when you're out and about. So key summary for me would be, a year into ownership, to me this is superior than the more modern, larger 42mm iteration. This 40mm piece is just brilliant. I think values are fairly strong at the moment. It's a good time to buy, but you know, they have been a bit volatile over the last year or two. I think that as a daily wearer, supremely comfortable, a little bit under the radar, also a little bit different. And to me, I think this later style bracelet is the one to go for. So I think that kind of came in around the end of the tritium range, so kind of late 90s. So that to me is what I'd go for. Thank you very much for watching. I'm hoping to put a few more videos of my kind of watches and collection up here, so stay tuned for a new incoming actually, which I'm receiving in a couple of weeks' time. So I will give you my thoughts on that one. Stay tuned. Thank you.